Thanks. Well, now's as good a time as any, Mr. Dillon. Take her down to periscope depth.
Yes, sir. Clear the bridge.
Dive! Stand right.
Hi, everybody. This time I learned to unmute my mic. Greetings, I'm Salvador Cordova, and this evening, or depending on what time zone you are, it's 1:30 a.m. or so Eastern time zone, and it's still Sunday night in Matt's time zone. I'm privileged to have RawMatt here. This is really the first time I think he and I have interacted. We may have talked in passing every now and then, but goodness, was it only last night? Matt generously offered to join the show I had on DNA mutation rates, and I dissed him, and I asked him if I could make it up to him by having a separate stream. And so I told him he has the floor today. He can advertise his books. I want to do everything I can to, as I do for all guests, to be able to represent himself and represent the work and advertise it. I've always been grateful for opportunities when people let me do that. And so maybe just a few things to plug this channel. This channel it's a family-friendly channel. It's devoted to exploring evidences for the Christian faith, and with a big focus on education, and also trying to let people hear the other side within limits, meaning I'm not going to get every random person who wants to come here and just trash Christians. That's not what I'm going to be about. What I do feel is important is that when people go out there in the real world, especially science students that go off to college, they're going to face, I want them to be exposed to the sort of people they'll encounter, like university professors or very, very sharp graduate students. Anyone who's going to study creation science, they're almost going to be a lone wolf in some departments, where they may be the only Christian in some departments, or in some classrooms, or definitely the only creationist there. And even much more so, probably the only young Earth creationist, young cosmos creationist. And they're going to be in an environment where their ideas and their beliefs are challenged every day. It's not going to be easy. I feel it's important to get a little taste of that through this channel and just kind of learn ways to deal with it. I've shared this last night. It's different when a creationist has to stand up in a group of 40 postdoctoral students. That means people that have already their PhDs in a variety of fields, and to get up there and defend your viewpoints. It's a totally different crowd, and that's one of the reasons. And people sometimes have complained that I seem very reluctant to be too aggressive. That's just not the environment when one goes into research institutions. It's just normal to be far more guarded in one's conclusions. Just a little bit of setup. I did what I call a reconnaissance by fire or a reconnaissance in force. I just threw some ideas out that were on my conscience. And I said, I have a feeling Dr. Dan will probably want to contact me. And if he does, this will be a good conversation. And I talked about mutation rates, DNA mutation rates. I finished the stream last night at about 3 a.m. About 7:15 this morning, I get a letter from Dr. Dan. Not that I answered it because I was asleep, but I saw the timestamp, and he said, "Sal, I really want to get on your channel." And I said, "Hey, that's great." And so we had a conversation today. So I've had to, I think I said this in the show earlier when Dr. Dan was there. I said I thought I really got him now, and I'm just going to have to backtrack that. I was bragging to everyone. I think I got Dr. Dan, but we had a good conversation. I said, it was pretty humbling. There are a lot of things about this that I don't completely know. I'm still very favorable, and I wish the best for Dr. Jeanson's work. To whatever extent that I can help strengthen the arguments, I'm happy. So with that, RawMatt, introduce yourself, and Standing for Truth is here. So I'm going to let you just speak your mind, and however I could be of service to you tonight, you let me know.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I am part of Team Standing for Truth. I joined him, almost coming up to 2 years now. Mostly I just did the video editing, but since now he's actually figured out a lot of things, I can step back and he can make some videos, go live all the time. He does a lot of different things. So we actually now split kind of like our resources and our time. So I'll write one book and he'll write another one, and then we can just collaborate and, do things separately. And it saves us all kinds of time, because if you ever written anything, you realize how much time it takes. And sometimes when you're both writing one thing, you might say the same thing twice, or you step on each other's feet. It just becomes a mess. So we each have our own little projects going. We also have a website called Creationist Clothing, where it's not just clothing that we sell, but we actually started up articles, and we have links to our books and things there. And it's just kind of like a one-stop shop for everybody. That's what it eventually wants to be. And people can come and debate and read blogs and do all that kind of stuff. And I only got into young Earth creation not long ago, maybe 3 years ago. So it's new to me, like Christianity, all of it. I wasn't raised. My parents are still atheists. They don't care about religion really any way, shape, or form. They're busy just with business and work, like most people. So really, matter of fact, not even really most of my friends are. So that's kind of strange as well. I don't really bore them too much with all the science that I like, because they're martial arts guys. You know what I mean? They're constantly working on fighting techniques. I don't think they're really interested on de novo mutation rates. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I'm so fascinated by it, but I just am. I'm addicted to it, and makes me wish that if I went back in time, I would have been able to learn both sides of the subject, because that would have made it so much more interesting. But as you know, going through school, you are under fire now if you actually have the belief that's not mainstream in the secular view. If you contradict that in any way, shape, or form, you're met with ridicule and the risk of, getting a bad grade. You answer what's in the textbook and nothing else. So that doesn't seem very fair to me. It seems like they should be able to teach the controversy, and that's my next book. But for right now, mostly mutation rates. Oh, you're muted. But
I'm sorry, RawMatt.
No problem.
Thank you. Well, what I do with you guys, see, I always leave my mute button on and I forget to turn it off. I've laughed. I said, I could have done a monologue for like 45 minutes on mute and not realized that if people in the chat weren't helping me. So if you could indulge me a little bit, I think a lot of the people know your story. I actually don't. And I've been, even though I know in passing a lot of the Standing for Truth team, and they've been very generous to me, most of my interaction is focused on making a good presentation, and I don't have a chance to really get to know people. So you said you weren't raised in a Christian home. How did you become a Christian?
Much later in life. It actually became something that somebody just kind of made a passing comment about my diet, and that originally got me set on it because back in around 2002, I was competing a lot in no rules cage fighting tournaments, competing a lot, fighting all the time, and somebody made a derogatory comment about what I was eating, and I didn't know what they were talking about. Literally, they were a vegan, so they were actually appalled that I was eating meat, and there was blood everywhere because I was eating a roast beef sandwich. And he made a statement, something like, "Why don't you just eat fruit?" And I didn't even know what to think about that. Honestly, I thought I was on candid camera. I was looking around like, what is this dude talking about? And after he talked to me for a few minutes, I was just like, okay, hey, you know what? I'm sold. If it improves my athletic performance, I'll try it. So I did. I went 100% fruitarian like the next day, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. My performance really shot up. Matter of fact, I competed in a triathlon without any training at all, and I was blown by people. It was great. So what happens is later on, somebody came over and they said, oh, you're on the Genesis diet. And I said, Genesis diet? I've never even, what is this? So they said, no, it's the biblical diet. You know, it's what they ate in the Garden of Eden. They were only eating the fruit off the trees. I said, oh, that sounds pretty cool. So I looked into it, and then I was like, oh, Christianity, that's interesting. So I got a little bit into it and started going to different churches, you know, kind of popping around to different ones and trying to figure out, like, you know, what's going on here? Why are there so many denominations? And then I went to other things and, you know, just, you know, before this, I was watching Ancient Aliens. You know, I was like, oh, what's going on with people, right? And then I started studying different religions and, you know, Buddhism and Hinduism, and reading all the different texts and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, and then reading the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I mean, I read through all the different things, and then I stuck with the Christianity seemed fascinating. So then I got into Young Earth Creation. I was like, oh, it seems to me to be more science-backed than these other ones. So I want to go where the evidence is. So I became a Young Earth Creationist because I felt as though this is where the model is the strongest in my mind. So that's what.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That is awesome. So you saw my show yesterday.
Yep.
And I hope it was informative. And I actually didn't think Dr. Dan thought a lot of what I said was just terrible. So I feel like I passed much of the Dr. Dan filter. He did have some reservations, and I said those are really points I'd like to consider. So your thoughts on that, and then what was on your heart last night that you wanted to say, but I didn't let you, and thank you for giving me a chance to make it up to you. So just speak your mind.
All right. Well, no, last night was just like you said, you wanted to talk about mutation rates, and I like the subject so much, I was just going to jump in and just go crazy like usual. But no, last night was good. You had found a study that clarified since 2012, we have been able to identify the difference between somatic mutations and germline mutations. And then Dan jumped on today and said, well, it doesn't really matter because the study that Dr. Jeanson was looking at, he directly reiterated in his writing that he wasn't able to delineate the difference between germline or somatic mutations, so he just lumped them all together, and that's why he got such a fast mutation rate. So that threw you back a little bit because you were specifically showing that, well, if Jeanson was able to see the difference between the somatic and the germline, then he was able to get an accurate mutation rate for his study. So we can jump now and look at the difference between what you found out and what Dr. Jeanson was saying. And I can even show you visually by just sharing my screen real quick as well.
Yes, and then if you'll indulge me, I'll also share some of the papers that I had. So you first.
Okay, great. There you go. Looks like you're able to see my screen, so I will widen it up for everybody. And it looks like I clicked on something on accident. Now, this is from replacing Darwin from Evograd. His objections were the same as Dan's. He said the same thing about, oh, well, it was the somatic mutations that he looked at when he shouldn't have. So the first rebuttal to that would be, there's agreement between the two mtDNA mutation rates that exist. Well, first off, most look at the D loop. And the reason why it's much smaller than the entire mitochondria. So the entire mitochondria being 16,569 base pairs. Well, it's a lot easier to look at just the D loop. Now, this gives a mutation rate right here. And what we're seeing is Jeanson looks mostly at the D loop with his studies, but it doesn't really matter because it also confirms with the entire mitochondria. But here's the thing. Jeanson also took into consideration the Mark Stoneking's lab in 2016, which shows that a mutation rate, which looked at the human mitochondria germline transmission bottleneck, which could have been used as an indirect method for mutation rates. And it found that this was a similar overall mutation rate as all the others were. And here's the study. I can give you guys these links so everybody can follow along as well as soon as I'm done screen sharing. And then number 3 is that he used this mutation rate to predict. So if it's predictive powers there, that's a really good thing. That's really what it comes down to. But 4, we'll notice right here that since Jeanson has gone through multiple other species with mutation rates, and the answer is always the same across independent databases, then that's pretty safe to assume that we're looking at germline. That's why he said, I'm confident that it is germline. But how about dyad versus triad? Remember, they keep saying that dyads aren't as good as triads. Well, okay, the results already have been performed on the autosomal mutation rates. Sorry, go ahead.
RawMatt, we're getting some feedback. Is it on my end or yours?
Oh, I'm not really moving, so I hope it's not mine. I can stop screen sharing if you think that might be doing it.
Let me cut down my. Is anyone else hearing echoes or anything in the chat? If you can, if not, that's good. I'll just continue. As I pointed out, I might only interrupt you just so I could clarify if I don't understand a term.
No problem.
And because if I don't understand a term, there might be people also in the chat that don't. And so you used the word dyad and triad.
Yes. So
what is that referring to?
A dyad study is just a single generation, 2, die like in 2, and a triad is like triple. So it looks at both parents and then the offspring, or for example, a grandparent, a parent, and an offspring child, a grandparent or a grandson, right? So a dyad is just 2 people. It might look at just a father and a son. It might just look at a grandparent and their kid, as where a triad is a little bit more valid because it looks at more. It looks at both parents and the offspring. So if you see a mutation arising, let's say in the mother and not in the father, but it gets passed down into their child, then we can be certain that it's in the germline. So that when we look at dyads and triads, we find that the mutation rate is almost identical. So therefore, we can be confident in saying that Dr. Jeanson looking at dyads is completely fine because they confirm one another. If there's parsonomy between dyads and triads and entire mitochondria and the D loop in mitochondria, then we can be pretty safe to say that these mutation rates can be used to make predictions on, and that's why Jeanson really likes them.
Well, what I wanted to say is that I think I'm getting that echo again. I'll talk a little bit. I'm going to put on a headset.
Sure.
And after I do that, when Dr. Dan and I talked, there were 2 points that there were 3 points, and then you, by all means, continue. The point that stood out was he said it's very easy to determine what he called the pedigree mutation rate. You have the grandparent, the parent, and then the grandchild, just across 3 generations. And as I was thinking of it, I said, there's not going to be any doubt if you have those 3. And
Right.
I found that very compelling. He said, I think, and that was the earlier show, he said you could take even the blood cells. And then I pointed out, I said, that seems to be the standard for whatever reason. I cited this NGS paper on germline and somatic, and I pointed out to him the blood cells are the kind of the silver standard for the germline mutation. He said, that's news to me. And I said, well, it occurred to me the Parsons study, the 1997 Parsons study, where the related Howell study, those were triad studies.
Yes.
And I'm like,
and blood.
Dr. Dan, I mean, this probably confirms the mutation rate. You're not going to disagree with the numbers as far as the mutation rate, he was calling the pedigree mutation rate. And then he said the time to most recent common ancestor, we have to think about time to fixation. And then I pointed out, I said, well, that assumes fixation happens in constant size populations. You don't expect it in exponentially growing populations. And I can show graphs. Most people agree that the human population has had an exponential growth rate. And so I was like, yeah, didn't refute all the points. And I was still very humbled, though, because he used a lot of terms that I wish I were familiar with. He was more knowledgeable in developmental biology. So that being said, I interrupted you. And when you said triad studies, I was like, you know what? I think if I'm reading this right, Dr. Dan's not going to disagree with you either. So this correlation between the dyad and triad is very compelling to me. So please continue.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just going to try to hook up my earpiece. Thank you.
Sure. So what we can do is we can look at these dyads and triads, and we can say, well, let's see if there's agreement when we look at these. And since we do see this agreement, we can say, okay, well, what else agrees? And if every time we look at these pedigree mutation rate studies, they are falsifying the deep time, then there must be something to them. And so because they believe evolution to be true, they have to say, well, there's no way that this can be true, because there's no way a most recent common ancestor can only go back a couple thousand years. So therefore, there must be something like selection, and selection is coming along and it's removing these deleterious mutations. So therefore, we can also only go back a few hundred generations. Dan said 500. So, and then it kind of evaporates. Well, what happens is, let's look at what's going on then. How many substitutions do we actually find when we look first at the demographics? So let's say, okay, we find about 1 mutation arising every 30 to 44 generations, right, in the humanity. Okay, well, once that's reaching fixation, we can go, well, this doesn't really take too long based on the population size. So if evolution is true and we go back, let's say, the original assumption was 144,000 years ago that there was a bottleneck. So using this evolutionary assumption, they would predict that there would be 1 new mutation every 12,000 years. That's assuming that evolution is true. They looked in the human genome and they were like, whoa, it's every 33 on average. So the exact opposite. It wasn't 12,000, it was 33, a huge difference. So their bottleneck, which back in the 90s was about 144,000 years ago, now it's 200, making the numbers even worse for them. We don't have a problem with low fixation numbers. For example, the most diversity we see in humans today is 24 substitution differences between the most diverse people on Earth. Me to, let's say, an African, we would have 24 fixed substitution differences. Now, for evolution to be true, those numbers should be extremely high, meaning humanity has existed in the evolutionary time frame for millions of years since the split. And then there's been some bottlenecks where the population is being reduced to just thousands of people for thousands of years. Well, you don't get small tribal populations not reaching fixation quickly with new mutations. And every time they're reached, that mutation doesn't go anywhere. And we can look inside the genome and we can count them and go, oh, well, there's only 24. Why are there only 24? Well, because humanity's young. They have to come along and they scratch their heads and they go, that number can't be true. So selection, gene shift, gene conversion must be getting rid of some of these, right? That's what Kondrashov wrote his entire book on, and trying to figure out this problem, because it is a problem for evolution. It's not a problem for us because 24 fixed substitutions is directly in line with what we would exceed. There was humanity started out from Adam and Eve, just a small population of people. And then the population was growing slowly because people were living for a very long time. And you can see the ages of when they had their kids, and it's very, very high. So small groups of populations, and then it goes until the flood, and then it's reduced, boom, it bottoms out again. And then you have another bottleneck where small populations go again. So we have two small populations of humanity going into the past where we have fixations going rapidly. That accounts for the 24 different fixed substitutions we get. And it's in line completely with what we would expect from a biblical standpoint. But from the evolutionary one, it actually falls apart because you can't have multiple bottlenecks with small populations of people not reaching fixations. We should see hundreds and hundreds of substitution fixations in the human population if deep time evolution was true. But the fact we don't see that whatsoever when there's a fast rate of mutations building up, I mean, it's pretty clear. It would be evident to me that we're looking at the observable evidence. And that's why Jeanson says, you know, I'm confident looking at this fast mutation rate to make predictions that it's not going to slow down. These rates are fairly fast. They're constant. And they're constant enough to make a prediction on. Yes, some people groups are faster, some are a little bit slower, but nothing that's outside of the realm of where it falls back to the evolutionary model. Remember, they've never looked at a pedigree study and one time gone like, oh, this goes back a couple 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years. That never happens. They only go back around a few hundred generations, which is exactly what we would expect in our model, because that's exactly what's going on. So what they do is Parsons and Howell came along and they looked and they got the fast mutation rate and just a few fixed substitutions. And they go, well, they didn't care if evolutions are true or not, really. They're working for another reason. They're trying to figure out family relations to people. And so they saw these fast numbers. They were like scratching their heads going, that's pretty bizarre. But who cares? That's just the way it is. We'll let other people deal with the problem. And then as time went on, they were trying to slow the rates down. So other studies started popping up. And they were able to look at a couple studies and get 0 mutations and not seeing any. And then they realized, oh, they were looking at an inbred family, or they were looking at identical twins. Or for example, Sal, I don't know if you know, but when you look inside the mitochondria at the D loop, there are 2 areas, then they're called hypervariable regions. And these hypervariable regions are quite small. But if you only look at one, you neglect seeing the other mutations in the other side. So it ignores heteroplasmy. You can't see other mitochondria in people. You can only see one type. And you're only catching half the mutations. So it slows the rate down. And then what they do is they compile all the different mutation rates and they go, see, it's a little bit slower. They're trying to push it back so that it can match their phylogeny rates, because phylogeny is based off the fossil record assumption that human evolution is true. That's why creationists don't use them. We only look at the observable rate. And that's why we like the pedigree studies. So the difference between the pedigree is just the observed empirical rate, and the pedigree, the phylogeny is based off the fossil record. So we don't use it because we don't have to hold to there being an evolutionary timescale. And think about this as well. If selection is really removing all of these mutations, then obviously they wouldn't be seen to be counted in a mutation rate study to begin with. So that is why substitutions are so good, because once they do reach fixation, they're not going anywhere. They're stuck in the population. That's what's really good about them. But also, mutation rate accumulation is something that's not always just happening in human beings, but it happens in animals too. So Jeanson came along and said, I can predict animal mutation rates as well. And remember, to say that Dr. Jeanson doesn't really understand blood and stem cells, his peer-reviewed studies in Harvard are on stem cells. That's exactly what he specializes in. So if anybody really knows to determine whether or not something is germline or somatic, it should be the guy who specializes and studied directly in that. So I'm pretty confident when he says, oh, that's germline, he probably knows what he's talking about. That's just another thing. But
well, again, just a few hours ago, talking to Dr. Dan, as best as I could tell, he said this is the method with the triad study. You can establish the pedigree mutation rate. What his argument was that I should have asked him, and this is an oversight on my part because I was trying to process so much. I wanted to ask him what he believes the pedigree mutation rate is. I dropped the ball. Okay, maybe I'm the guy in the end zone and the ball was just headed right toward me, and I just let it bounce off my chest and dropped it. Because I should have said, well, Dr. Dan, what do you think the pedigree mutation rate is? All right, for the Parsons study, do you accept the pedigree mutation rate there? You may not agree that it gives us the time to most recent common ancestor, but I should have pressed him, and I dropped the ball. Okay, so I was just thinking, oh man, Sal, you could have settled it, at least to ask him, and I didn't. So guys, I don't know how we're going to arrange this because I don't know what to do. I mean, can someone come forward and who's been critical of Dr. Jeanson and just, okay, so we don't agree the time to most recent common ancestor. Tell us what you believe the pedigree mutation rate is and why. And I think we could move the conversation forward because he did agree that the triad method, and I was thinking this, I said, okay, so you agree we can infer whether a mutation was somatic or germline. So if he sampled, he actually described exactly what I was thinking. And I showed a little slide, and I said, what to do is you take all these various cell types and you sample them. You can discriminate because cancer researchers want to know what is a germline versus a somatic mutation, because a lot of cancers are due to somatic mutations and they want to be able to discriminate. And where he said, the one thing what he said, if I recall correctly, even though it was only 2 hours ago, he said that was the one criticism I had. He was saying maybe you can't use those techniques to come up with a pedigree mutation rate. And then I said, okay, so what would work? And I don't think I even had to say that. I think he actually beat me to the punch. He said, all you need is the grandmother, the mother, and then the granddaughter. And I said, that's exactly what I was thinking. We don't need any of the fancy stuff. And I'm like, wasn't that the Parsons study? And I dropped the ball. It was right in my hand, or like I was already running toward the end zone and the ball I just let it go. I should have asked him. I said, well, then do you have a number for your pedigree mutation rate? And I think that would have moved the conversation forward. And so guys, there you have it. And oh my goodness, John Maddox is here.
Nice.
I didn't mean to. I tried to schedule this so that you had 3 hours for your open mic. I wasn't trying to impinge on your open mic. So between Dr. Dan and RawMatt, I had about a three and a half hour break. So thank you for joining us. And RawMatt, I think I didn't mean to derail the discussion. So
no, not at all.
I just like saying, guys, there's no need to have a big firefight between us and them. We can ask a very simple question. What do you believe the pedigree mutation rate is? That's what I would go after. And man, I really dropped the ball tonight. I should have just asked Dr. Dan, what do you think the pedigree mutation rate is? Do you have a couple minutes? Could I show you some of the slides?
Absolutely.
I had.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I know what what inspired me to say what I'm about to say. You were mentioning Dr. Jeanson would be the expert on stem cells and distinguishing. And so I did bring this paper up to Dr. Dan tonight. And I talked about this, what they use in cancer research, where they're able to infer what are somatic versus germline mutations. And it's just a tool, and the cancer researchers use this to determine somatic versus germline mutation by sampling somatic cells. So that was one. And then another article is this thing about blood. And this is where Dr. Dan said, I didn't know that. I'm just going to read here. And Parsons happened to sample blood. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. His study is directly on blood cells and stem cells.
All right. So why blood? And I'll just read from here. NGS-based profiling reveals a critical contributing role, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, somatic mtDNA mutation was defined as the heteroplasmic mutations observed only in HCC or non-HCC tissues. That's the particular cancer, HCC, and then non-HCC is the one that doesn't have cancer, I presume. Anyway, but not in blood samples in a patient. Considering that most of mtDNA mutations in blood samples may be germline, which is suggested in supplementary figure S2, available at Annals of Oncology Online, it is acceptable to use blood as a control to identify somatic mutations in HCC or non-HCC tissues. And it offers a little caveat. So the point is, and that surprised Dr. Dan. He said, why would that be? And I was like, and I responded, I said, well, I guess it's all moot if you use the three. And he was the one that offered the three, the triad where grandmother, mother, and granddaughter. I said, it's all moot. The reason I was excited is we're at the point that we probably, if someone really wanted this, they could establish the pedigree mutation rate totally above reproach. And Dr. Dan gave the parameters. And I'm just like, well, so why is the Parsons paper in doubt? They followed the protocol of triads, and I could see why the FBI would accept it. So maybe I dropped the balls. Can someone pick it up and not drop it? The next time they have the chance to ask EvoGrad or anyone else what they believe is the pedigree mutation rate. And then we can move the conversation forward.
You know that Parsons contacted us, right?
Repeat the story. I heard that when I was really, really sleepy, one of those Erica bashing sessions on SFT, and I was just so sleepy. And I said, did I hear that right? So please fill us in.
Sure. I am going to go to my channel right now and screen share. So there's two things I wanted to show everybody. Hold on. I think I just messed up. Did I not share that? Okay. I think you can see my screen, right? Oh.
Yes, it just takes about 5 seconds to get your screen share.
No problem. So this is Parsons right here. He said, thank you for reaching out. However, I have zero interest in dealing with, oh wait, I have to click on it. It's kind of cut off. Oh my gosh, that's small. Hold on, maybe I can zoom in. There we go. Ooh, that looks blurry. What in the world is going on? My wheel doesn't work to zoom in. Okay. So basically, he came along and said, look, I've been doing this for a long time, and I was bombarded with criticisms for his findings. and he showed conclusive evidence for over a decade that his conclusions were valid and that they were wrong. He even helped Stone King, which was a critic of his, in research, even though he attacked his work. Yet all his personal attempts, referring to Stone King, in the future studies failed to invalidate his past results. I have only started receiving emails recently about, he's talking about creation versus evolution stuff. He doesn't really want to have any part in it. He says, I have already rendered the critics and arguments they all brought up as useless over the decades. So clearly I'm not interested in doing it all over again for the next generation using the same arguments. So this is pretty cool. He talks about where he works and that the mutation rate he went through is actually really accurate, and that it's clear that the critics were trying to say that it wasn't accurate. And he still has the largest studies of today. He confirmed his first study in 1987, again in 1998 and 1999, where he got about the same amount of people together and did it again. But I thought you might also like this one. You recognize this, right?
Oh, RawMatt, and I apologize, I haven't followed this. How can we find what you just shared with us so that we could read it? And like I said, I was just about half asleep, half dead with sleepiness when I first heard this, and I said maybe I was dreaming. So when you said your channel, where can someone post your channel, or maybe someone in the chat? Do I need to get someone mod privileges? Let me try.
You know, I would just go to Standing for Truth, because I know it's on my channel, RawMatt, but everything that's on there is on his channel. So
Standing for Truth, if you're there, can you link to that letter? That was really awesome.
Yeah, he said, if anybody wants to challenge me, submit your papers. So he's pretty confident in his work. We'll find it now. I'll scroll down.
You know, all I could say is we have the method of, I mean, to the best of my understanding, what Dr. Dan said today is, if we have those 3 generations, that would be the gold standard for establishing a pedigree mutation rate. So,
right.
I mean, for the first time today, I heard it from, I mean, the way I understand it from Dr. Dan, he would find that an acceptable method. I don't see how that can be disputed.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
If Parsons used that, so...
Right. They just don't like that Parsons study was so long ago, being in the 90s. Right. They're like, oh, we want more up to date. But here's the thing. Pedigree studies, they're not done very often. We do have some, but they're not like a regular thing. They don't come out every single year, and they're not done on a lot of different things. They're not done on animals very much, and they're not done even on humans that much, because they've already got the empirical rate. Why waste the time, right? So, wow, he posts a lot, doesn't he? I'm still scrolling here. Anyway, let me go. Oh, you're right. No, I better not.
Well, we have the man himself here in the chat, SFT.
Really? That's good. You know what? It's so much easier.
Let me post this. He said, it's going to be hard to find. Laugh out loud. We will do a separate video on it for everyone. It'll be Cardinal versus Parsons. So,
yeah. Well, if you want to just read it real quick, just go to mine. Go to RawMatt, type it in, click on my face, go to community, and it's the last one that I posted right here at the top for everybody. Boom. That's it. That's just that quick. And if you want a link, I will copy and paste it right over here for you. And boom, there you go. Now, here's Evograd. And before I forget, you know Evograd. He's the one that first out came up with the criticism. So let's go to the word agree.
I know Evograd. He and I have parried on Peaceful Science. And
right.
Of course, I'll say I felt I got the better of the exchanges, but of course, I'm totally biased. We were arguing over zinc fingers and what was it? tubulin polarity.
Yeah.
But please go on.
Did he block you or what? Oh, okay, you're gone. No problem. Okay, what I wanted to show you is this. I think this is it. His whole mitochondria mutation rate approximately matches mutation rates in other studies obtained from the D-loop control region, which is the same thing. Let me briefly recap what Jeanson did. He surveyed pedigree studies, which is the trio studies we're talking about, 3 people, looking at mutation rates in the D-loop. And then he weighed them by statistical power and got a mutation rate of this per base pair per generation for the D-loop. Then he looked at the entire mitochondria for pedigree studies and found the same rate. And right here, from his dyad study. And look at what he says. This is the critic, by the way. It is true that these approximately match. So notice that the pedigree study does match the dyad study of Ding et al. On his somatic mutation rate. Did you catch that? So that's huge. The critic himself admits that they match. And then, of course, he drives into his rescue device, but given his methodological issues, that we can't conclude much from it all. What do you mean you can't conclude much? Jeanson made predictions based on this. So, of course, you can say that the mutation rate isn't valid when you're not making any predictions on it. They admit they can't make predictions on evolution because evolution can do anything. So if that's the case, it's not a very good case. You know what I mean? You're trying to say that evolution is true because evolution is true and we can't make predictions on it because it can do anything. Well, okay, you can believe that and you can reach for your rescue devices. You can say selection removes these mutations. But that's the big question. Nobody can figure it out, and they need to figure it out because that's their problem. But you notice how everything agrees with us pretty well. Everything is going like just a few hundred generations ago. We find that there's a convergence with all the different pedigree mutation rates, all the dyad mutation rates, all the entire mitochondria, all the D-loop of the mitochondria, the different fragments inside the mitochondria. There's 37 genes that are inside the mitochondria. And when you test those, like for example, the CO1 gene, it's fast as well. So what are the odds that all of these fast mutation rates are in agreement that of a recent creation, but yet conflict with the evolutionary model? You know what I mean? What are the odds that they all converge on with what we would say a human being that gave rise to all of humanity lived a few hundred generations ago, and that's what we see. And then their model says, no, humans came out of a bottleneck 200,000 years ago, and none of it agrees with it. There's not a lot of substitution differences between all humanity. The mutation rate is fast. There's accumulation of new de novo mutations every single generation that are accumulating. And then what can we do? Let's go back to Evograd real quick. Remember this? Remember when he got mad? Looking at this chart right here at Dr. Jeanson for saying, I can't believe Dr. Jeanson used 21,000 in his chart right here. And if you scroll down, you can see him get mad at that right here. He said they would only go up to 12,000 mutations because then a mutation's saturation would occur and you wouldn't be able to see over 12,000. All he's doing is hand waving. Why do I say that? Because what do we see? We only see 1,400. So who cares if his chart said 21,000? Even if it said 12,000, it doesn't come anywhere near the saturation of 12,000 that's required for evolution to be true. It's just not there. And the reason why is because it's just not true.
I think that's also a money graph right there.
Yeah.
And one thing we could do is just, I think one way to prosecute this is, like I said, we first ask them, what is their pedigree mutation rate? And then in the discussion with Dr. Dan, he was giving all the parameters for the population structure. I said, okay, why don't you give what you believe is, where can I find a model for the population structure over time? And let's just see what their models are saying, because it just occurred to me this evening as I was talking to Dr. Dan, I said, oh my goodness, there are so many different models and we don't know which one is being talked about and I think it's been a little bit kind of vague what the model is, and I think that can be pursued. And so you're saying Evograd said it should be 12,000?
Yeah, yeah, that was his only problem with this chart.
Can you highlight that again?
Sure.
This is
Sure. This is, I think, where he finds the problem. In other words, it would appear as though on an order of 12,000 mutations had occurred, there would be no way to distinguish between 12,000 mutations occurring and 447,000 mutations occurring because of saturation. After 12,000 differences accumulated, any additional ones would fail to be detected. Yeah, so what? Does that show 12,000? No, not even close. See the problem?
yes, that may be the money graph right there. And I mean, if I could just convey this has always been just my concern in the models in general, but both sides. I'm not trying to single out creationists or evolutionists. When I had my discussion with Dr. Jeanson, and also in passing with Dr. Carter, and I learned about this from Dr. Carter about the heteroplasmy versus homoplasmy, and Dr. Carter seemed to indicate that there are rare, there's some famous cases of heteroplasmy, and so I would like to know more about the homoplasmies. This makes the population genetic models kind of nightmarish, and I don't know how to steer around that. I'm just kind of saying from my perspective. So I wish someone would create a tutorial where we could just walk through some of this. I really, this is a little embarrassing. I really hate genetics because it has all these uncertainties. The reason I say that is just like, if you saw my show with Otangelo, everything I said, there's no dispute. When I start describing the nuclear pore complex and its complexity, no one's going to dispute that. It's just so easy. The problem with this is because these are events in the deep past, or even 6,000 years ago, it's people find ways to disagree. But so the reason I like studying proteins and molecular biology, we're looking at the present, and it's easy just to make an argument that this is designed and it can't evolve. It doesn't matter what the time frame is because it's just so complicated. So that's probably why I don't like delving into genetics. People can do this sort of thing and just do a delaying action, but I could tell you that on the stuff when I discuss complexity, the argument's usually over in like 30 seconds. People don't even want to show up at that point. There's just like I've engaged Evograd over at Peaceful Science, and I challenged him on Rob Stadler and changed hand in Rob Stadler's book. He didn't have anything of substance. He just kind of punted.
Wow.
He pointed out a few things, but it wouldn't be long drawn out like this. So
Right.
I was just articulating. I wish I had more time to investigate this more. And I just feel bad. And apologies to people that are big fans of Dr. Jeanson's work who've actually studied it more than I have. As I said, he's a fellow soldier, and he and I have suffered persecution together at the same. Did you hear my story that we were at Lipscomb University and the biology faculty were screaming at us?
Yeah, I did. That's crazy.
So I feel kind of bad that I haven't really read through his work. You know, most of my work has been in the protein and molecular biology realm. And so I'm kind of relying on you and SFT and the rest of the gang to kind of prosecute this case, because this was maybe the first and only time I might weigh into the mitochondrial issue. So
yeah, no problem. I have a book that I'll give to everybody right now on the mutation rates, and I'll share it real quick for everybody, and I'll put it in the side, which means you can give it to people.
I made you a moderator on my channel, by the way. I think if I
Oh,
didn't,
okay.
can you type your name and I'll make you a mod right now?
Sure, sure. I'll post something so everyone can see it. Sorry, I don't want to close myself out. Ooh. Whoa. For some reason, I am unable to.
Can you type something of like say hi, I'm Matt, and I'll try to make you a moderator.
Yeah, but for some reason, I can only see comments. I'm not able to scroll down even far enough to leave one. I'll show you my screen.
If you're trying to do this through StreamYard, it may prevent you from doing that.
See this? You might share my screen.
Oh, Doki Doki may have. Do you see what Doki Doki wrote?
Yeah, true story of mutation rates. Yeah, but that's on Amazon. I don't need people to buy my book. I was just going to give the free document link. See it in private chat right there? You can grab that link and just give it to everybody. I don't care.
Okay, let me put it in private chat, and I will put that. But let me just do a plug for you, RawMatt. If you would like to support RawMatt for his work, go ahead and buy it on Amazon. Unless there's another way to would you prefer they donate to you directly? Is there some sort of
I don't have a donation. Oh yeah, we do have a donation link. It just goes to Standing for Truth, but it will be on the Creationist clothing.
Okay, so I think I got it. I got your docs, and then I'm going to try to put it in comments, and you can tell me if I got the right link.
Okay. Yeah, that looks like it. Everyone should be able to get it again. Yeah, everyone. That should take.
That's very generous of you to the audience. See, it pays to come out here in the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what's fun about this is the book's only about 100 pages, so it's not really overwhelming. So I explained the difference between all the different types of mutations and mutation rates. You know, the difference between dyads and triads and entire mitochondria. I show the different segments in the mitochondria, and I explain how substitution works. You know, I give little pictures, little diagrams of pyramids, things like that. It's kind of fun. But here's something you might like. Did you know Dr. Jeanson said that if we're looking at a demographic of people, and let's say we have the most diverse people based on nucleotide sequences, we're going to find it goes up to about 115 or 117, and it's in an African, a Sans individual, and that's the maximum. And so he extrapolated back all the way to Noah's flood to figure out how many generations that would be. And it lined up exactly with what his predictions would have been. But the only problem with that is that for the most diverse individual, they would have had to have a reproductive age of around 15. So Erica made a video saying that that's the biggest problem of all. And she had CRISPR-Cas9 come on and say, yeah, that's just absolutely ridiculous. So on Standing for Truth channel, we actually have an entire video that I made specifically answering that very criticism, because that's the only criticism they actually have to Dr. Jeanson's work on that. Because if the most genetic diversity in nucleotide sequences in the mitochondria is just 115, you would need so many more if evolution was true, because of how fast these nucleotide sequences change. So how far back do you go before that reaches? And it's just like what the Y chromosome study showed about 1400 or 4,500 years ago. So pretty incredible.
I just wanted to ask one maybe related question, since you're sharing your book. When was it? When did you publish it on Amazon?
A few months ago, maybe 3 months ago.
Now, do you have another book? Did you write one with I thought you wrote one with SFT on, and I forgot the title. I'm sorry. There was kind of a big hoopla on that, and I totally missed it. If you saw my bookshelf, you'll understand that I have so many books I haven't even read that I spent a lot of money on, and I just had to kind of just stop and say I need to just go back and read the books I have. So, but you had another book, didn't you?
A lot. Yeah, we have a lot of books now. So,
well, Standing for Truth, you're supposed to come on this channel, wasn't that right? I mean,
here's
your chance to plug your work.
Universal or separate ancestry. We have you know, all kinds. Look at that. Whoa, it's not even scrolling. There we go. And we have color versions in black and white. So there's the difference, because some people just might want to save money. So we have Kindle versions, and then we have physical copies, and we have black and white version. Like I have the Young Earth creation model. That one's like 500 pages, but it's just in black and white. You can find one for about $11.15 because I can't make it any cheaper. Then you find another one and it's $17, but it's the same book. And the reason why is because if you want mass distribution, you have to push a button and it charges more, but it puts it in Barnes and Nobles and on Goodreads, things like that. So our books are actually in Barnes and Noble now, which is pretty cool, but it puts the price up. Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to put it right next to Richard Dawkins' books.
All right. I wanted to say, hey, SFT, RawMatt told me you were going to join the stream. Would you like to join? This is your chance to plug your work and your books and everything you do, and also my chance to give a personal thanks for everything you've done to get my channel, my educational channel started. Do you want me to give? I'll give you a link here. So
throw it in. We'll see if he can join. His kids might be too loud, screaming in the background.
Mrs. SFT might be giving him grief, so we understand. So, let's see. We've gone up to an hour, and I wonder if John Maddox's channel is going. I don't want to steal from his.
I could check.
Is he still Logical Probable YouTube channel?
Yeah. Still.
Oh, still rolling along.
You can do the same thing with skates. You can do the same things with.
It's Erica. She's on there. She joined. So that's going to be a while.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Someone go over there and ask, Erica, what do you believe the pedigree mutation rate is for humans?
There you go.
Oh, someone go over there.
I don't think she'll answer me. She said, she asked me just the other day, what is your criteria for a human being in the fossil record? Like what physical characteristics make them different than the primates? I go, well, since there's 5 criterias for what a primate is, my 5 criteria would be a nose bone, a physical bone in the nose where we can put glasses, and it actually hangs on. It would also be forward-facing toes. We don't have the primate extended toes. We have more rib cages, or less ribs, but a lot more spinal column, like 33 lumbar. So it'd be lumbar size. We have a subcutaneous layer of fat, but we can't see that in the fossil record unless we're, very well preserved. So I excluded that one. Bipedalism and a reproductive bone. Primates all have an actual bone, and ours is an organ. So I gave those 5 criteria, but she never replied back. So I was hoping that would, because that's in her field. She likes primate and paleontology. So I figured, hey, if I can answer her toughest question, what's differentiate a human being in the fossil record from a primate, maybe she'll be happy with that. But nothing. Guess she didn't like the question.
Well, let me do a little advertising for me. So Montaz says education channel, epic, because I understand like 5% of this stuff. You see, this is telling me I'm fulfilling a need. People just know my temperament. I'm not really into generating drama. I often say I'll refer them to my friend Smokey Saint if they want a high drama channel. So there you go, Smokey. I'm plugging your channel again.
So nice.
I think some people may fall asleep with some of the stuff I present, but I feel it's really important. I want people who are not planning to become biology majors, because it's a 4-year program. It's a good program if you're going to become a pharmacist, a medical doctor, a biochemist, et cetera, to be a biochemistry student or a biology student. But to understand the creation evolution controversy, you could probably get through the basics surprisingly quickly, certainly less than going through a 4-year program or being a junior in all this. And that's my goal, so that people can understand what the discussion is about. And so that's how I feel I could be of service. Some of the really fancy stuff and the high drama and debating, that's just not my personality. God's equipped other people to do that. John Maddox is the man to be doing debates. That is not me. I would dilute the even if we had a tag team. So I just wanted to share that this is how my channel is going to be different than most anyone else's. Is that this is where I'm going to be devoting time, and I may have less subscribers as a result. Because I'll tell you that I was surprised that my debates on modern day debate have always had far less views than the flat Earth debates. Like, okay, that's just the way it's going to be, you know. So I just wanted to give. Sorry, RawMatt, this was your show. I was taking some time to do some free advertising for myself.
Good.
So, I'm happy to host another show with you, and I'm kind of running out of gas, and I may just head over to Logical Probables channel and just hang out.
Sure.
So this isn't goodbye, and thank you for giving me a chance to make it up to you for dissing you last time.
No big deal, man. Sounds good. It was fun.
Yeah, congratulations on your book and your other books. And I'm really happy to hear that Barnes & Noble and things are moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, it's surprising. You know, it's hard to get into these places as a creationist. Really hard.
Well, you know, I was thinking it's business, right? If people want it, they need to sell it.
That's right. Exactly.
So there's, you know, there are probably some open questions I had, but I think I'll tell you fundamentally one reason I haven't weighed into this. I think if what happened to Thomas Parsons is any indication, people will start to figure this out kind of naturally, because to the extent medical science depends on these numbers, like pedigree mutation rates or the FBI, it's going to solidify itself, and we'll know who'll be in the minority. And we saw that with the ENCODE project, where it was kind of ironic. The evolutionary biologists were furious at the National Institutes of Health. I'm just like, guys, this is nuts. Do you know now who looks like the cranks?
Exactly.
When they're going after ENCODE and just calling, you know, like their head leader, Dan Grauer, is calling them a bunch of ignoramuses and crooks. I'm just like, yeah. Do you know how silly you guys look? It looks like you don't like the facts, and now you're going to throw a tantrum. And so that's one reason I'm not too urgent to, you know, try to win debates, because God's truth is marching forward.
Yeah, the evolutionary model is looking more biblical all the time. And hey, NIH itself uses Mendel's accountant. Guess what? That's a young Earth creationist created model. You know, that shows evolution can't be true. There's not enough time. So if it's good enough for NIH, I'm just saying.
Well, just from my knowledge, I don't know anyone that uses it at the NIH.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I just have to sorry, you know, I can't let that one go. I can't speak for that. All right. I know if the creationists there, it is true. We tried to get it at the NIH. We really did. We actually tried to go to the CDC, because that's where it's a little more probably relevant. For
look, NIH, Mendel's accountant. You can do the simulator right there.
Whoa, that's news to me.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
I have it. I have a link in my book. I can send it to you right now.
Oh boy. Okay, RawMatt. I take that back, bro. I did not.
I'm on it. I keep up to date. Here you go. I'll email it over to you right now. But you want to get going, so there you go. Send the email.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and this isn't goodbye. And I'd like to thank all our viewers. And, you know, my shows, my live audience is usually kind of smallish. So I really thank you for taking time. I hope you get a lot of views for this. And if there's stuff in the email you want me to have to put in the description for this talk, I'll do that too. I'm not the most organized person. but I'll do my best in gratitude to make sure your work is promoted.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Will do. I can send it over for you. Make it easy.
All right. Well, I look forward to hanging out again. And everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us, especially those on the East Coast where it's almost 3 a.m. in about 15 minutes. So take care, everyone. RawMatt, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me on, man. Till next time.
Good night. And I just have a quick question for you backstage. And take care, everyone.